My name is Margaret Lewis, and I thought I had already faced every storm life could throw at me until the night the Whitmores came back. The rain had been falling since dusk, a slow, relentless drizzle that made the air heavy and the world small. I was in the kitchen, finishing a batch of cinnamon rolls for my grandchildren, when headlights cut through the window like two white knives. A black Mercedes stopped in front of my porch. I knew that car. My hands froze, dusted with flour. For a few seconds, I just stood there, listening. The engine died. Doors opened. Then came the sound of heels against the wooden steps, measured, entitled. When I opened the door, they were standing under the porch light, soaked but proud as ever, Lorraine and Gregory Whitmore, and their son, Daniel, my former son-in-law. Lorraine's diamond earrings glittered even through the rain. She didn't look like a woman coming to make peace. Her tone was calm, almost polite, when she said, "Margaret, we'd like to see our grandson." I felt my heart stumble. My grandson. For 3 years, no one outside this house had spoken that word. Behind her, Daniel shifted his weight, his eyes avoiding mine. The same man who once promised to protect my daughter had stood silent while his parents threw her out in the middle of a thunderstorm, pregnant and terrified, just because the ultrasound said she was having a girl. Now they were here again, clutching flowers, speaking of forgiveness, pretending that the past had simply washed away with the rain. I stepped aside just enough for the light to catch their faces. "You should have come sooner," I said quietly. "You're 3 years too late." And that was how the storm began. Again, the night they threw my daughter out still lives inside me like a bruise that never fades. Every time it rains, I can hear her voice again, trembling through the storm. 3 years ago, the Whitmore mansion glittered like a dream. My daughter, Emily, stood beside Daniel beneath a chandelier the size of a car, her hands shaking slightly as she said her vows. I remember thinking how small she looked in that silk dress, too gentle for a family that spoke in contracts and smiled only for cameras. Lorraine Whitmore, Daniel's mother, ran that household like a boardroom. Her eyes measured people by what they could offer. During the wedding dinner, she leaned close to me, her perfume sharp as metal, and whispered, "Emily's lucky. We don't often open the door to outsiders." I smiled politely, but I saw the line she drew. From that moment, I knew kindness was going to cost us something. For a while, it seemed they tolerated her. Emily sent me pictures of the garden she'd planted behind their glass patio, and I told myself she was happy. Then the calls stopped. When she finally came home one weekend, her smile looked practiced, and there were small red marks on her wrist where stress had left its signature. "They keep talking about the baby," she told me quietly. About the name, the nursery, but mostly about how it had better be a boy. I told her to rest, to eat, to let me handle things if they got worse. But I underestimated how quickly cruelty can move when it wears expensive shoes. The night she was cast out was colder than most. Thunder rolled over Bellevue, shaking the windows. I woke to pounding on my door and found Emily standing there, drenched, clutching an envelope and a hospital printout. Her lips were blue from the rain. "They know," she whispered. "They saw the ultrasound. They said they don't need another girl in the family." Not behind her, a black car idled by the curb, its headlights washing over the puddles. Daniel sat inside, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. He didn't get out. I took her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and tried to warm her hands. The envelope held a cashier's check and a single-page agreement, an informal settlement, unsigned by her, promising her silence and freedom in exchange for no further claim to the Whitmore estate. She ripped it in half before I could say a word. Then she cried, Not the sharp kind of crying that ends, but the soundless kind that shakes the whole body. When she finally fell asleep on the couch, I sat there beside her, watching the storm through the window. Lightning flashed across the sky, and for a moment I saw Daniel's car still there, unmoving. Then the headlights blinked off and he was gone. In the morning, the rain had stopped. The world looked calm again, but inside our house, something had broken beyond repair. Emily didn't speak much for days. She just stared at the envelope, or what was left of it, lying in the trash. People talk about heartbreak as if it's a clean wound, but it isn't. It's a splinter that buries itself under the skin and waits for years. I didn't know it then, but that night was only the beginning. The real storm hadn't yet arrived, and it would begin with the sound of 2 tiny heartbeats. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and rain-soaked coats. Emily went into labor early, 6 weeks before her due date. The doctors moved fast, voices low and urgent, and I stood by the door with my hands clasped so tightly they hurt. I thought I knew what to expect. One cry, one tiny miracle. But when the nurse looked up, her eyes widened. "There's another heartbeat," she said. For a moment, the world stopped. Minutes later, 2 cries filled the room, thin, fierce, demanding life. A girl first, small and pink, her lungs already fighting. Then a boy, slower, quiet for a breath, too long before letting out a wail that tore through the silence. Emily was exhausted. Her hair stuck to her forehead, her face pale but glowing in a way I'd never seen. I sat beside her, holding one baby in each arm, feeling their warmth seep through the hospital blanket. She watched me with tears in her eyes. "Mama," she whispered, "we can't let them know about him." At first, I didn't understand. I looked down at the boy's tiny hand wrapped around my finger. He had Daniel's dark eyes, that same stubborn set to his jaw even as an infant. "They'll take him," Emily said. "If they find out I had a son, they'll try to claim him, to raise him like a prize they won back." Her voice trembled. "I won't let them touch either of them, not ever." I wanted to tell her she was being dramatic, that people changed, but I had seen Lorraine's face that night in the rain. I knew she was right. We named them quietly, away from paperwork and noise. The girl became Ella Rose, soft as the petals of the flower she was named for. The boy, Ethan James. After my late husband, 2 names whispered into the night like a promise. When the nurse came with the forms, Emily hesitated before signing. Under father, she left the line blank. The nurse glanced up but didn't ask questions. In small towns, people still know when not to pry. We spent the next few weeks in my home, a modest yellow house with a garden that smelled of mint and wet soil. I turned the guest room into a nursery. Nights were long, but sweet. The sound of 2 babies breathing beside each other was the most fragile symphony I'd ever heard. Sometimes, Emily would wake crying from dreams she couldn't finish describing. I'd sit on her bed and hum until she drifted back to sleep. Outside, the world moved on. No reporters, no Whitmores, no lawyers, just us. It felt almost safe, until the first anonymous letter arrived. No return address. Just a single line typed neatly across the paper. "We know about the boy." Emily's hands trembled as she read it. I took the letter and burned it in the sink, watching the edges curl and blacken. I told her it was probably nothing, but inside, I felt the storm begin to stir again. For 3 quiet years, we lived as though the world had forgotten us. Emily worked mornings at a small bakery downtown, and I stayed home with the twins. The smell of cinnamon and sugar clung to her hair when she came through the door, and the children would run to her, their laughter filling the house like sunlight. But peace never lasts when there's money and pride on the other side of it. One afternoon, I was folding laundry while the local news played in the background. The anchor's voice made me stop mid-fold. Gregory Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings, is reportedly facing financial turmoil following health issues. The segment showed the mansion, the gates I once dreaded. Gregory was ill. His company was losing investors. Lorraine stood outside the courthouse in sunglasses, pretending control she no longer had. Emily walked in, saw the screen, and froze. "Do you think?" she began, but she didn't finish. We both knew what she was afraid to say. 2 weeks later, a black envelope appeared in our mailbox, no stamp, just our address written in perfect cursive. Inside was a letter embossed with the Whitmore seal. Emily, it read, "We've made mistakes. We would like to visit to see the children. Please don't deny us the chance to make things right. Lorraine." That night, Emily sat by the window long after the kids had gone to bed. "Do you think she's changed?" she asked. I shook my head. People like Lorraine don't change. They adapt. Still, curiosity is a quiet poison. When the Mercedes returned a week later, Emily hesitated before opening the door. Lorraine stepped out first, wrapped in pearls and pity. Daniel followed, thinner, older, his eyes dark with something between guilt and desperation. They spoke softly, offering reconciliation. They wanted to support the children and to make up for lost time. Then came the part that made my stomach turn, Lorraine's offer of a trust fund for Ethan, the rightful heir. Emily's hands clenched at her sides. "You didn't want him when I was carrying him," she said. "You wanted him gone." Lorraine's smile didn't waver. "We all make choices we regret." I could almost hear the click of the trap closing. When they left, Emily stood at the window, silent. The streetlight caught her reflection in the glass, and for the first time, I saw fear where strength had been, because both of us knew they wouldn't ask again. Next time, they'd take. The papers arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a man in a gray suit who wouldn't meet my eyes. I signed for the envelope, and by the time I'd opened it, my hands were already trembling. The Whitmores had filed a petition for custody, of Ethan only. They claimed he was the rightful heir to the Whitmore family trust, that Emily had hidden him illegally, that they could provide a more stable environment. Every line of that document felt like a knife disguised as courtesy. Emily read it in silence, her lips pressed tight, her eyes dry but glassy. "They're not taking him," she said. "Not while I'm breathing." We hired a lawyer from Tacoma, a kind woman named Sandra Lynn, who specialized in family law and didn't flinch when I told her who the Whitmores were. "They'll play dirty," she warned. "They'll use every headline, every favor they can buy. You need to be ready for that." The following months felt endless. The tabloids started sniffing around, posting old photos of Emily and Daniel, twisting the story into something cruel. Headlines called her the runaway daughter-in-law and the mother who hid a millionaire's son. People at the bakery began whispering. Some customers stopped coming. But every morning, Emily still packed Ethan's lunch, braided Ella's hair, and went to work like nothing had changed. The day of the hearing came with heavy rain, as if the sky remembered that first storm. The courtroom was small, cold, and full of cameras waiting outside. Lorraine sat in the front row, her pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Daniel was beside her, thinner than ever, avoiding our gaze. When the judge entered, the room fell into a hush. The Whitmore's lawyer stood first, spinning a tale of forgiveness and redemption. "The Whitmore family," he said smoothly, "only wishes to right the wrongs of the past, to offer their grandchild a future worthy of his name." when it was our turn. Sandra rose slowly. She didn't speak of wealth or legacy. She spoke of nights spent in emergency rooms, of diapers bought with overtime pay, of a boy who called only one woman Mom. Then she opened a folder and handed something to the judge. "This," she said, "is a signed statement from Mr. Daniel Whitmore, dated 3 years ago. It was included in the divorce paperwork. It reads," and I quote, "I relinquish all parental rights and responsibilities for the child my wife carries." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Lorraine's face drained of color. Daniel's head dropped into his hands. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Whitmore, is this your signature?" Daniel didn't look up. "Yes, Your Honor." The sound that left Lorraine was somewhere between a gasp and a growl. Her composure cracked, her voice sharp as glass. "You fool," she hissed. "Do you realize what you've done?" The judge rapped his gavel once. "Order." His tone was calm but final. "The petition for custody is denied. Custody remains solely with Miss Emily Lewis." I felt Emily's fingers find mine. She was shaking, not from fear, but from release. 3 years of silence, judgment, and shame, all collapsing in one breath. When we stepped outside, the cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions, but I didn't answer. Emily just held Ethan tighter, his small hands gripping her coat. For the first time since that night in the rain, I felt the storm beginning to pass. News spreads fast when it smells like scandal. Within days, every local paper and business blog was carrying the same headline: "Whitmore heir loses custody battle." Lorraine tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, but no one bought it. Investors began pulling out. Partners suspended contracts, and Gregory, already frail from illness, resigned from his company before it collapsed completely. For the first time, the Whitmores had no power left to hide behind. Their mansion on the hill, once a symbol of wealth and intimidation, went dark. Curtains closed, gates locked, and guards dismissed. The empire that had stood for generations was now just another foreclosure notice taped to an iron gate. Emily and I watched it all unfold from our worn couch, the twins curled beside us. There was no triumph in it, no satisfaction, just the quiet realization that cruelty always carries its own weight. "Do you feel sorry for them?" Emily asked one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought about it. The truth was complicated. "Maybe a little," I said. "But sorry isn't the same as forgiving. Some people need to lose everything before they understand what they've taken." Life settled into something gentler. Emily returned to her routine at the bakery, and I began volunteering at the library again. Ella learned to play the piano, her small fingers dancing across the keys, while Ethan built towers out of Legos that always seemed to fall, yet he never stopped rebuilding. Sometimes, when the kids were asleep, Emily would sit on the porch, staring at the dark line of the hills where the Whitmore estate once stood. "It's strange," she said. "For so long, I dreamed of seeing them fall. And now that it's happened, I just want to move on." I nodded. "That's how healing starts." I told her. "Not with revenge, but with quiet." The world slowly stopped talking about the Whitmores. Their name disappeared from headlines, replaced by newer scandals and louder tragedies. What remained was peace, small, fragile, and ours. But peace is never permanent. It's something you keep rebuilding, like Ethan's towers. And I didn't know it yet, but the story wasn't quite over. Because one evening, years later, as the sun set behind the maple trees, I saw a figure standing by the old fence at the edge of our yard, tall, thin, motionless. Daniel. And that's where the final chapter began. He stood there in the fading light, half hidden behind the fence, as if unsure whether he belonged to the world on our side anymore. For a long moment, I didn't move. I simply watched him, his shoulders thinner, his posture weary, his suit hanging loose like a costume he no longer fit. Daniel didn't notice me at first. His eyes were fixed on the yard where Ethan and Ella were chasing Bubbles, their laughter echoing across the grass. When he finally looked up, our eyes met through the slats of the fence. He gave a small nod, tentative, almost apologetic. I walked over slowly, my heart tight, but calm. "You shouldn't be here," I said softly. "I know," he replied. His voice was rough, as if unused for a long time. "I just wanted to see them. One last time." The golden light from the setting sun caught his face, and for the first time I saw the boy he used to be, the one who once promised to love my daughter forever before fear and pride hollowed him out. "They're happy," I told him, "and safe. That's all that matters now." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I heard about my parents," he murmured. "About everything that happened. I lost the house, the business, most of what I thought I was." His eyes glistened. "Turns out, I only ever lost what didn't matter." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped box. "For Ethan," he said. "Tell him it's from a friend." I hesitated, then took it. "I'll tell him," I said. He smiled faintly, sad, resigned. "Thank you, Mrs. Lewis, for not teaching them to hate me." The words caught me off guard. "Children don't need lessons in hate," I said. "They learn it from silence and shadows. We just kept the lights on." He looked at the children one last time, his hand gripping the fence. Then he turned and walked away, his figure fading into the dusk until only the sound of crickets filled the air. That night, I gave the small box to Emily. Inside was a toy car and a folded note written in Daniel's neat handwriting. "Thank you for raising him better than I ever could. Tell him I love him, from a distance." Emily didn't cry. She just pressed the note to her chest and whispered, "That's enough." And somehow, it was. The years have a way of softening even the sharpest edges of memory. The rain still comes and goes, the seasons still circle back, but the house feels lighter now, filled with the kind of peace that doesn't announce itself, only lingers quietly in the corners. Ethan and Ella are 8 now. On Sunday mornings, they chase each other through the yard while I bake cinnamon rolls, the same scent that once filled this house on the night everything began. Emily hums as she washes the dishes, her voice steady, content. She's built a life that doesn't glitter, but it shines in ways no diamond ever could. Sometimes, when thunder rumbles far away. I still catch a flicker of that night in my mind, the headlights, the rain, the fear, but it fades quickly, replaced by the image of my daughter's smile, of the children's laughter, of the man who finally walked away and didn't look back. People often ask me how I found the strength to forgive. I tell them forgiveness isn't something you wake up and decide to give. It's something that grows quietly over time, like grass pushing through cracked concrete. It doesn't erase what happened. It simply refuses to let pain keep the final word. I think Daniel understood that, in his own broken way. The box he left for Ethan sits on a shelf in the living room. The note inside has begun to fade, but Emily won't throw it away. "One day," she told me, "when they're old enough, I'll tell them everything, the truth, but without bitterness." That's the part that makes me proudest. Not the victory in court, not the downfall of the Whitmores, but the way my daughter chose peace when she had every reason to hate. On evenings when the light turns gold and soft, I sit on the porch and listen to the children's voices echo across the yard. The world feels smaller now, safer, I used to believe storms were meant to destroy, but I've learned that sometimes they just clear the air, washing away what never truly belonged. And as the wind carries the scent of rain through the open window, I know the storm has finally passed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.